Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast, the show for fleet executives, HR leaders, and recruiting professionals. I'm your host, Ginger Craddock.
And I'm your host, Aaron Craddock. Each week we share actionable insights, market trends, and proven strategies to help you grow and thrive.
Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast. I'm your host, Ginger Craddock. Well, today's episode is a little bit different. Aaron recently spoke alongside George P. Bush and Robert Corwin about macro trends in AI and the economy. What he's seeing right now in trucking is something that Aaron is calling the super cycle. We're going to break that down and see what's happening, why it's happening, and what it means for recruiting and business leaders right now. So, Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm eager to dig into this super cycle and what you're seeing. So you were just on stage with George P. and Robert Corwin. What stood out to you most?
Yeah, so George introed talking about just the data center build out in the US. And some of that goes back to, like, I remember being with a fleet a few months ago. You and I were visiting a fleet, and they mentioned just how they haul a lot of stuff for data centers and how that had ramped up and kind of they had just unlimited capacity. And that was kind of the first time, maybe 6 months ago, where I started hearing kind of flatbed freight ramp and just kind of the initial signal that things were kind of changing and heating up. And I really didn't think that much about it. But when George presented last Friday, he shared a lot about just how many data centers are in Texas, how many data centers just in other states, and then where just the projected builds. I think it's this year, like 3 billion a day right now being invested in AI. Yeah, and one stat I heard recently was 7% currently of flatbed volume is attributed to data centers right now. And that's a huge number, and it's here to stay. It's not something that, like, even with, some regulation and folks, just some data centers not coming online, that still is not impacting just across the board. Like, we're going to continue to see this heat up just because of all the things that go into data centers. And so he started, and then Robert Corwin with Austin AI went into just AI and enterprise, just in their consulting business. And so they're implementing AI successfully into several different businesses, and they went through different use cases of just practical application and just improving businesses. And so, and then I kind of wrapped it up at the end talking about how the buildup in those data centers and then regulation and all the different things just creating what some might call a super cycle. Yeah, I'm extremely bullish on freight right now, and just new numbers coming out every day that just support a new cycle.
And I am incredibly curious about that through line. I love the through line that you painted between all three speakers, and that I hear you. I was wowed when you said 7% of the freight right now in flatbed is related to these data centers. And so I'm curious, Aaron, why is trucking where this is showing up in the real world?
Well, when anything gets built, like a reindustrialization, which is really what we're seeing in America right now, as things get built, everything comes on a truck. And so where you see it first is in manufacturing and it ramping up in flatbed. And then, and then we see the demand for drivers go into all other sectors of trucking. And so on the full truckload side, yeah, just demand, spot rates are through the roof, like we're seeing it. One of the other things I should have mentioned about George's talk is he also talked about the Iran war. And, a lot of the news around freight is worrying about fuel prices spiking and the impact that'll have on the industry. Well, spot rates have continued to climb. And, even taking fuel out of the mix year over year, spot rates for truckload are up, I think, 15 to 20%. And so it's been durable, even though fuel has spiked. And so what we're going to see that's also going to drive trucking is just the increase in military investments and manufacturing and emphasis on that. The president put out, I think it was the Defense Production Act. I can't remember the exact thing that came out in the last couple of weeks, but basically opening up all lanes to produce more energy in the U.S., to restock on ammunition and different military defense investments. Like, all of that's going to drive trucking too. And so the things that are going on overseas and geopolitically, paired with the rise of AI, are all going to just drive trucking forward.
And I hear you on the government piece of trucking. I hear you on the energy. It's so interesting that he talked about each of those sectors. We live in Texas, and we are seeing in real time the impact of AI between the ranch and Austin. We're seeing the impact of that build out in real time. Also, as ranchers, there's a lot of oil and gas in the area where we ranch. And so over the last 3 years, we have in particular seen that increase. And so this is fascinating to me, Aaron. And I know that you've talked to over 20 large fleets recently. What are they telling you around this topic and all these different types of freight?
Yeah, so when I'm talking with these large fleets, I have spoken with over 20 of them in the last few weeks, and they're all sharing a similar story of they have more opportunity than they've had during the Great Freight Recession, as we would call it. And, they've gone from cautiously optimistic to optimistic but disciplined. And so that's kind of what I've seen, that most of these fleets are, again, going from cautiously optimistic to optimistically disciplined. And so that is, they are adding capacity, ordering trucks. Year over year, the March numbers, Class 8 trucks were up. The orders were up over 100%. And so you see them adding capacity, but doing it in that disciplined way. And then they're trimming maybe the bottom 10%, 20% of contract freight that doesn't make sense, or rebidding it. And then sometimes I'm even hearing that they're picking up those contracts they kind of wanted to drop after they've rebid and put a higher price than they thought it would close at, had those contracts accepted. And so fleets are looking to add capacity strategically and starting to believe this is a durable recovery, like build into a new freight boom cycle potentially.
That's insightful. I'm curious, based on some recent reports that you've shared with our team, what are the large public carriers saying right now?
Yeah, so recently, JB Hunt and Swift Knight came out with their insights on what they were seeing in the market, and what they see are volume stabilizing in general. A lot of capacity exited the last 12 to 18 months. And again, they mentioned, like when I was talking about some of that disciplined growth, like that was kind of a recurring theme that fleets are setting up for that disciplined growth. So again, a lot of capacity has exited the market the last 12 to 18 months. And then people are gearing up for disciplined growth. What they're using is, in both of those reports, kind of inflection point language. Just, hey, there's a trend that's here to stay. And then citing spot rates up double digits and different things like that. So overall, the sentiment has gone from cautiously optimistic to full-on optimistic amongst some of the largest fleets in the country as those reports have come out.
And so are there other data points that you're hearing? You touched on several of them. What else are you seeing in the data?
So some of the things I mentioned already, the data points that have been really interesting to me specifically right now relative to this new freight cycle, are just the 38,000 trucks ordered in March. And so that's up over 100% year over year. Spot rates up 15 to 20% year over year, taking into account fuel, like backing that out. And then news is starting to come out about driver tightening. And so, yeah, I saw a report that came out today where it was the first time I had heard the term like truck driver shortage.
That's insightful. And so, Aaron, as we think about those data points, the real world feedback that you've gotten from the fleets, what the data is saying, I'm curious, let's dig a little deeper. What's happening under the surface from your perspective?
So we've been talking about the demand side. And so demand up, driven by reindustrialization of America. Now I'm going to go into the supply side. And when I say the supply side, that's capacity, and it has a lot to do with drivers. And so what you see in this cycle that hasn't ever happened in a cycle is the increased just enforcement through the FMCSA of different things like English language proficiency. One of the stats we heard when we were at the Mid-America Truck Show from the Secretary of Transportation was that specifically like with the English language proficiency, they've already pulled 17,000 drivers out of service. That was a specific number. And then the second thing that's removing drivers from the pool is the non-domicile CDLs that were illegally issued by states. And so they did an audit of those non-domicile, the FMCSA did, of several states, like how many of these non-domicile CDLs were issued legally. And they found that, I think it was like 50% in New York, 25% in California, and 20% Illinois, or somewhere around there, were issued illegally of the non-domicile CDLs. And so recently, I mean, there was some news a couple of weeks ago that one state said any of these issued illegally, effective immediately, those drivers can't drive for those fleets. And if you keep them on, it's a $50,000 fine per driver. And so that was, again, 2,000 drivers out of the pool overnight. And so you see, again, that not new regulations, but just enforcement of regulations we've had in place for a while that may not have been followed.
And sitting in those sessions at the Mid-American Trucking Show and hearing strategically the actions they're taking and why they're taking it, you mentioned some of those high California and some of those other states that, in the words of the FMCSA director, bad actors that they're getting out of the mix. I kind of cringed when he mentioned, I was like, oh, California and the other, what were the other ones you mentioned? California, New York, some of those. But then my ears started to burn because he said Texas. And, you know, being a Texan and us being a border state, we have some challenges there. And so just thinking about the impact even in Texas and how important it is to get the bad actors off of the roadways and out of the mix to make room for the high quality trucking professionals who are doing the work and doing it in the right way.
When you're saying bad actors, like what do you mean?
Great question. As I understood it when it was explained by the director, what they're thinking there is people who've come into the system and haven't checked all the boxes. Maybe one of the examples he gave is in one location, they might have multiple, the IDs that go on the truck.
I know that, I think is a DOT number, FMCSA number,
yeah.
DOT number.
So,
like there's maybe, I think one example they gave is like 700 fleets registered with the same address.
With all different DOT numbers. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. And yes, that's the appropriate context here. And when he shared those numbers of like hundreds in one location, it's like, okay, he painted the picture clearly of this is not what we're looking for. We want true and accurate reporting, true and accurate, good training for those who get CDLA licenses. And so that's another piece that they're cleaning up is they're looking at schools and they're wanting to empower the schools doing things the right way, and they want to remove the schools that are shortcutting and not putting the right type of driver with the right skills on the road to meet expectations and to drive safely.
Now, a quick note from our sponsor. Hiring CDL drivers isn't about more leads, it's about better ones. That's why serious carriers partner with Hire Truckers by Trucking Clicks. We don't sell ads, we bring clear strategy, straight talk, and a relentless focus on quality drivers. Even in a tough market, our clients see improved performance month over month by optimizing smarter and making every hiring dollar work harder. For honest insight, sharper targeting, and results you can trust, visit truckingclicks.com or call 512-982-0816. Hire Truckers by Trucking Clicks. Clarity, courage, results.
So next I want to move to, Aaron, how do you see the geopolitics impacting trucking?
Yeah, specifically, which I touched on a little bit of this earlier, when George was talking about the Iran war last Friday. War drives freight in the U.S. Like, just if you look back historically, when there's conflict, like, freight increases as defense production and just production relative to that. It's a big driver in freight. And so that, to be as succinct as possible, is what's going on in Iran right now, will drive more freight across the country.
And thinking about that, what role does policy play in all of this?
So specifically, George talked a little bit about AI, just legislation. And so that's around water usage, that people, kind of the not in my backyard cohort are concerned. Just people are concerned, like the average American, with increased power costs relative to data centers and increased water usage, worried there's not enough water. And so with that, there have just been, like George was talking specifically on the Texas side, just considerations into policy making around water usage, around pulling power off the grid. The president has said some different things and released some different things about guidance around power production, encouragement for these people building these AI data centers to do their own power production. The Department of Energy is really focused on, because of this reindustrialization of America, largely driven by AI and other increased manufacturing in the US, specifically just how do we make sure there's enough power? How do we make sure there's enough water? How do we get enough power online? How do we cut red tape? And so the states that win in terms of having a boom in their state relative to AI data centers is going to be largely correlated with, certain states are, completely trying to shut down AI data centers in their states because of concerns. Other states are hungry to get the business and grow. And so, yeah, there's just a lot in the works, a lot of moving parts every single day across multiple states and from the federal level in terms of legislation.
Aaron, you've done a good job of painting the big picture with broad strokes in terms of construction, restraints within different areas, the geopolitical piece. I'm curious now, how are you using AI? Let's pivot to that side, the use of AI.
Yeah, so specifically within hiretruckers.com and the different things we're working on, I had one of my lead developers come to me, I think it was about 2 years ago, and he's like, hey, if I'm not producing 10 times the output, I should lose my job, in the next year, you should fire me, or something along those lines. And I didn't really, understand, because AI has been a buzzword for 15 years, just how much things were about to be disrupted. But that really made me pay attention. When someone on your team comes and says, hey, my output should increase 10x. Yeah, that just makes you think, okay, well, things are changing really fast. And then just what we've seen with Claude Code and just AI usage implementation, the myriad of countless tools and software products and players in the space, and how quickly things are changing. And so what we've done in our business is we focused on just where use cases for quick wins in terms of, marketing automation and AI chatbots, AI call assistants, just any way to improve speed to lead, make recruiters' jobs easier, like how do you handle calls and forms after hours? Just really thinking through those problems and making it a better driver experience. And just I think those things are really important. And so that's where we're, thinking about and leveraging AI in terms of what we've built. And then, we did a book study with the team on several books in AI and got into the tools like as ChatGPT came out and Grok and Claude. And we've just been in the weeds, testing things, playing with things, incorporating it into our daily flow. The podcast agendas even come from AI now. And just everything has been sped up in terms of producing, and then the quality is improved, like in terms of our output in the business. And then also we can serve more clients at a higher level just by leveraging this technology. Like human plus AI is how we're implementing it into our business and how we serve our clients.
And I love the illustration of the story, how it moved from a buzzword that you'd heard a long time, and then the lead developer that we have here in-house came to you and gave that. I remember exactly how the pipeline flowed after that. You came to the rest of the team and you told everybody on the team, hey, your output should increase, and I want you utilizing these new tools in AI. And so to your point, it multiplied the impact, not only in what our company is able to do, but just across the board in individuals. And so to the audience that's listening, I encourage you, keep leaning in, challenge your team to experiment and grow and learn with these tools. We need the human experts in their specific fields, but that challenge that Aaron, I remember when he gave it to me, I was like, okay, I could do a few minutes a day, and how exponentially it's increased my learning and just my understanding in such a short period of time. And so thank you for that challenge. Thank you for what you're bringing to the market. And so I've heard how you're deploying it to help recruiters, helping individual team members, helping the industry as a whole. I want to pivot now and kind of go back to that language that you used of super cycle. So why are you calling this a super cycle?
Yeah, so being in the industry over 15 years, I've just seen a lot of freight cycles, and recruiting cycles. You see, plenty of high quality drivers that stay at a fleet and no real need to hire, and then when spot rates spike, it's usually not long after. If you're looking at a simple metric, you see the cost to recruit go up, and just how hard it is to recruit just go up, just as it gets harder to find good drivers. And so the reason I call this, say it may be a super cycle, is that you have the government enforcement layered in there, and you have what's going on in Iran geopolitically, and you have AI data centers. So these cycles happen regardless of a reindustrialization of America or a huge increase in defense spending. And they also happen whether or not you have increasing enforcement, taking drivers off the road. And so that's where this cycle is really unique, is we have three things we've never had. We have the reindustrialization, focus on bringing businesses back to the United States, the AI build out and revolution that's happening globally, but especially the build out growing, influencing that flatbed freight spike is where we've seen it first. And then just what's going on in Iran. And so and the increased defense spending and the increased investment in energy infrastructure. So all of these things drive, if you're looking at just factors, like reindustrialization drives up truckload, AI data centers drives up truckload, Then you have the geopolitical defense investment and just war in general being predictive of truckload volume increasing. And then you have the enforcement and then, everything from shadow carriers, a bunch of different fleets at the same address, like illegitimate, actors not playing by the rules. And then you have the English language proficiency and just those standards being enforced and the non-domicile. And like all of those are enforcement pulling drivers out of the pool that arguably shouldn't have even been there in the first place. I do think it's, making our roads safer in terms of the different enforcement of regulation. And it'll allow the fleets that are doing it the right way in this cycle to run profitably and be successful. And then it'll also, when recruiting gets tighter, like you have to have more of a focus on the driver. Like how can fleets better take care of their drivers to retain them and make sure they make a good income? So I think, this is just a lot of positive momentum going on relative to all those things that I think, again, could be a super cycle.
That's interesting. And thank you for kind of tying it all in together there and helping me see that. So I'm curious, what happens specifically in recruiting in this market? You've touched on some of it, but like kind of bring it all together in what happens in recruiting in this market.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing now is you have some of the first movers that have been, seen these cycles before and they're trying to get ahead of it. And so trying to fill any trucks that are on the fence as quickly as possible. As they get new trucks in, fill them as quickly as possible. Try to get those good, experienced drivers in that have a good safety record as quickly as possible, just knowing what's coming. And so you've seen those moves already. And what happens next is more and more fleets like feel the pinch. They see, hey, my lead cost has gone up 50%. My cost per hire has gone up 50% in terms of recruitment marketing. And then they're a little more reactive. And so, what we see now is kind of the first movers that are kind of noticing that cycle and trying to get ahead of it. And then what typically happens is everybody piles in at once. And so what I anticipate in the coming months is more and more fleets will want to grow at all cost just to capitalize on this improving market. And again, I think it'll be more disciplined in this cycle because fleets want to monitor profitability and cash flow and not overextend because they may have done that in the past. And so, I think you're seeing the first movers, and then I think more fleets will follow where they'll need to increase their investment in terms of the marketing and advertising side to bring on drivers. And so that's what I think we're seeing. I think we're seeing a little blip right now that feels like a lot of movement on the driver recruiting side, but I think it's just getting started. And again, that goes back to just seeing this play out in the past. It's, started, you've seen Signal, which is what we have right now. Like all of these are signals. The first, big companies coming out and saying that they predict double-digit growth through the end of the year. And what'll follow is increased focus on recruitment. And again, and this cycle is a little unique. I don't know that we, the term driver shortage gets thrown around. I don't know that there's a shortage of driver. There's definitely, it definitely can be challenging for fleets to find the driver that they need, like in terms of the driver with enough experience, driver with a great safety record, things like that. And so I think you'll continue to see the lingo start to fly around of a driver shortage, just as fleets are feeling this pinch and having to really do a focus on recruiting where they maybe haven't had to do a big recruiting push in 3 years.
And I hear you on that. The right drivers, the fleets are looking for the right drivers for their fleet that meet that criteria and are culturally a good fit. If thinking about the pieces that you've shared with us, if someone takes one action in the next 30 days, what should it be?
I think it's unique to each fleet. if it were my business, I would be thinking in terms of just the hiring math. Just how much does it cost in marketing costs to bring on a driver? Like, do I have the team that can handle that onboarding, like working the lead and bringing in that driver? And so, yeah, what I'm seeing, I mean, honestly, it's what I'm seeing right now, like already. Like fleets are adding headcount to recruiting teams. Fleets are implementing AI and marketing automation and trying to improve and be more efficient there. Fleets are thinking and talking about driver pay, driver benefits. How can they serve drivers better? And then fleets are doing that math of like, hey, it's on average $1,000 to bring in a driver. I need 20 a week right now. Okay, maybe I need to be investing 20,000 a week in marketing towards getting those drivers. And so, yeah, that's, again, I think it's just a math equation of like how do we, do this in a smart way, have a balance between improving the offer for drivers to bring them on. How do we better support our drivers? How do we, make sure if we are investing in marketing to bring these drivers on, how do we do that in the most efficient way possible and make sure that we're following up with those leads? And again, it all ties back to AI. Like, just how do you leverage the newest AI tools and developments? Like all this, that's the reason all this is being built out, is it's adding value. And then just a vision. And then some of it is a vision for it adding even more value in the future. And so, yeah, fleets are seeing improvements there and again, making moves. Like usually when you feel the pain of a recruitment challenge, you're already moving a little slow. And so that's where we've seen fleets move just before they felt pain, just in anticipation of durable growth. And so more fleets will as growth seems more and more certain, more fleets will try to add trucks as quickly as they can.
And so you've done a great job, Aaron, of helping us understand kind of the mechanics of why this is not a normal cycle and why you're calling this a super cycle. I am thrilled to see what's happening in the industry. I think we're all getting better and stronger with these constraints. And those that have navigated the past challenging cycle that lasted longer than anyone expected, I think it's producing better results on this side in that strategic balance that you were talking about. Cautiously, use that language again to kind of wrap us up. Cautiously optimistic, but I loved your language.
I will say though, I'm glad you brought that up. Just we're entering a new cycle where we're disciplined, like optimistic and disciplined. And not overextending is what I'm seeing from most fleets. I do know a lot of our audience is in recruiting. And so I also want to be a little empathetic that like when you have growth like this, it's painful. And even on our side, as our business is growing, like there's pain that comes with that. And what I'd say, to recruiting directors and leaders and executives is like, would you rather have the pain of growth or the pain of decline? And so we're going into a season of just the pain of growth. And so all these things we're talking about, like we can talk about the macro numbers and what's driving it and say like, hey, like budgets are likely going to go up. Everything's going to get more competitive. And again, we're doing that just based on the numbers. Like I handle the numbers in our business, but we're also empathetic that that's a challenge, like to add people. We're going through that right now with our business as we add headcount to better serve our clients and help. And we're seeing fleets see that, like needing to add, maybe another tier of management and maybe add 5 recruiters here or 10 recruiters there. And that pain is hard, and we're empathetic of that. But I'd kind of say, like, would you rather have the pain of growth or decline? And then I think it's a little bit more fun to have the pain of growth. I actually got invited by a friend to go out on the lake tomorrow. And I turned him down because I was just like, hey, we're in growth season and I want to better serve just the new fleets we're partnering with and our long-term partnerships and make sure I serve them well. So I would love to go on the boat. Yeah, we're just and he's like, oh, are you in the busy season for freight? And I was like, kind of, more like this is probably going to be a busy 3 years. And so, yeah, just buckle up. I don't know if this season will last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't fully know that it's a super cycle. I'm just trying to report on what I'm hearing from fleets and what I'm seeing. And yeah, I would love to hear feedback from you guys. Like, what are you seeing? Where are you winning? I'd love to celebrate that with you. But yeah, I'll wrap it with that.
Absolutely. And if you're in the C-suite or you're in safety or you're in recruiting and you're feeling some of the constraints of growth, we hear you and see you that you are likely making some adjustments on the workload as well. So get the work done and so that you can go out on the boat when the opportunity presents itself. So with that, this is not the makings of a normal cycle. It does have the appearance of being a super cycle without a doubt. So thank you for unpacking that for us, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Hire Truckers podcast, the show for fleet executives, HR leaders, and recruiting professionals. I'm your host, Ginger Craddock.
And I'm your host, Aaron Craddock. Each week we share insights, trends, and strategies to help you grow and thrive. If you found value today, please share the show and leave a review. Until next time, keep building top-performing teams.